A new BMW M4 is always a big deal because when the M division is set on making the ultimate driver's car, well, the competitors need to listen up. This is the new BMW M4 Competition facelift, and in this review I'm going to tell you why this is an incredible weapon with the duality of a sports car. The very criticized design from the M division is now gone. People have now accepted that this is the new design, and what a design it is! Look at it. It looks absolutely stunning. It is striking and it is certainly different, but they are kidneys, right? And you have the striking color that this BMW individual paint gives you. A sort of Skittles M&M color that is just popping in this light. Looks like no other paint I have ever seen before. Love it or hate it, it is what it is. But it gives this M4 the aggressiveness that it needs, maybe. But you have the aggressive front here with the black details, and for the facelift, these new headlights that gives it just a little bit extra hint of angularity that this car has. And underneath the bonnet you find the now legendary S58 engine. It's a potent power plant, this is, with now 530 horsepower, 20 horsepower up with this new LCI facelift. 650 Newton meters of torque and a 0 to 100 km/h time in 3.5 seconds. But we know BMW likes to downplay their numbers, so this is probably, and what we have seen is that it does produce more than those claimed 530 horsepower. Each iteration of the M4 becomes heavier, faster, more complex. So this weighs just under 1800 kilograms. That is a lot of weight to handle. And of course that's thanks to the X-Drive four-wheel drive system that we'll talk about a little bit later. But luckily enough, the M engineers have put or fit a set of electronically controlled dampers suspension in this car. So depending on which drive mode you're in, it will change accordingly. And while we're here, you can see these gold brake calipers, which means that this is fitted with the extra option carbon ceramic brakes, which it actually needs, and of course we'll talk about that later on. The designers have really succeeded in the symmetry of following the aggressiveness in front with this rear. You can see how wide the arches are, the extra optioned LED headlights or the laser headlights, that is, the dark gloss plastic here, and just the bulkiness that is just finished so well. Not too much, not too little, but it has the width, the heft, the bulk that a M4 needs here in the back. And you can see the four tailpipes here in chrome or gloss metal, and you see the huge silencer, and people have complained that it's a little bit quiet, but if you start it up, it gives a nice sound, and if you open the valves, it gives it the throaty sound that this car deserves. And let's talk about the storage space here in the rear, and I do fit, which is quite impressive, but it is not that surprising because it's a big car. This is a long coupe, and you can even fold down the rear seats. Of course we need to talk about the rear seat space as well. The Competition comes as standard with the carbon roof. That saves a few kilograms, but we need to talk about the rear seating space, and let's go down here. So these are the bucket seats that cost around 6,000 euros extra. They are, however, electrically controlled, so let's get into the rear here. And I slide back nicely. I'm 187 and I absolutely do not fit, but if I move my head a little bit forward, I actually fit. And I have a nice armrest here and I mean, look at the foot space. This is an M4, a coupe that many people might not find as usable as an M3. And of course you have only one door instead of two on the sides, but there is space. It is not that not user-friendly. So I was really surprised about that. Welcome to the interior, and I am sitting in the M Carbon bucket seats, which are comfortable, but if you are bigger than me, I think especially on the sides here, around the ribs and around the shoulders, it will not be that comfortable. You have the facelifted LCI M4, which means that you have a flat bottom steering wheel and a slightly different center console here. You do have two cup holders underneath here and a wireless charging pad. Pads behind the steering wheel, two M modes for unique settings for all the driver controls, and of course a drive mode selector, which you have a manual mode as well to go up and down in gears, 3 distinct levels, and a manual control for the infotainment system. 8.5, not the latest, such as in a BMW iX, the facelifted one that is, but it is very user-friendly. Takes a little bit of time to get used to, but everything is just a few buttons away. How is it to drive? Well, very normal. Of course, you're sitting in incredibly huggy seats. You have the carbon fiber all around you, and you have a very interesting greenhouse around you, but you have good visibility. You have very nice and subtle suspension. The steering is light. It's quiet, and the engine doesn't sound that much. It feels like a normal car. You have buttons to control the active cruise control, to change the gear if you want to. Everything is very logical, very normal. A little bit on the old school side, especially inside the interior. It's a mix between new and old from BMW. And I do like it. It feels like a best of hits from BMW to make this M4. And it's refreshed just enough to make it relevant in terms of the tech. Did they need to change the center dash? Well, obviously not, but apparently BMW felt so. I have a great navigation, I have a great digital gauge cluster, and a head-up display that shows me all the information that I want. And of course, if I go into the drift analyzer, M lap timer, and the different M modes, road, sport, and track, of course the layout on the digital gauge cluster changes. But driving it normally, I was surprised at how docile it feels like. It doesn't give any indication on what a absolute nuclear power plant is lying underneath that bonnet. Is there anything that you should fault it for driving this no more normally? Infotainment system is not the absolute latest generation, like in the iX for example. Should I give it some fault there? Maybe, maybe not. The indicator stock is very old. I have remembered these from very, very old BMWs. But is it bad? Well, it works. The feeling of them, maybe not the best, maybe, but you know, I'm nitpicking like crazy right now. The same as in the steering. In normal, it is extremely, extremely light, especially when you are driving in roundabouts, for example. But if you're driving on a highway like I am doing right now, I mean, it just works so incredibly well. And so does the assisted driving that BMW is calling it, or active cruise control, that is. Let's be honest. Why are you watching this video? Well, it is to understand the duality of an M4. The previous M4 was a little bit more hardcore. That's at least what I've read from the reviews. This is supposed to be, you know, heavier, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more grown up. But has it made it worse? Well, that's what we're going to find out, and we'll start in, you know, the normal, the comfort, the regular driving mode. And you do get some sounds. I personally like how it feels at 3,000 to 4,000 RPM. Once you get over that rev range, the turbos eat up a lot of the exhaust sound. Here we have a corner. Yeah, the front end is quite light, especially the steering is not that heavy, but you can carry a lot of speed. You have different levels to everything, so if I press the setup mode, I have efficient, comfort, and four-wheel drive, and of course sport, and then sport plus for engine and chassis. So the most aggressive setting that you have in steering and MX drive is sport. You also have the possibility to go into four-wheel drive sport and two-wheel drive with different levels of the traction control as well. I will not go into two-wheel drive. I will keep in X-Drive, which is always rear-wheel bias, or for the majority of the time, to make it playful but still stable. Send that power to the front when it is needed. So M1 and M2 is the individual settings basically. So you have one setting for M1, one setting for M2. The M1 here is everything in the most aggressive setting, but the four-wheel drive is on. So I have also manual controls, which I can use with the paddles behind the steering wheel or via the gear shift selector. And you can see on the camera already, and from how I'm moving, that the electronically controlled dampers are stiffer now to control the weight, but also absorb the unevenness on the road, which I'll show you a little bit later on how incredible they just absorbs the bumps while still being that soft and playful. So let's peg down a gear here, feeling the torque and the quite long gears as well. People don't understand how much power 530 horsepower actually is. It is a lot of power. It's a lot of power. And this M4 Comp just proves it. Just exploding out of the corners. Doing triple-digit speeds. And the way that the chassis, the suspension, just absorbs the bumps and keeps the tires in contact with the road. Just the ZF gearbox is not a DCT here, but it works amazing at when you're just pushing it here. Change direction very well, and you sit low down as well, and you know, you don't have to brace your knees, your leg towards anything. You are being kept in place in these seats. What I think I'm lacking from the front is not a lack of turning, maybe a little bit of stability, a little bit of that, you know, wired to your brain. I'm not getting enough feedback maybe. That's something that I feel is lacking, just that extra notch of connection. The long wheelbase, the stability, the X-Drive, which sends a lot of power to the rear, that really helps with the rotation when you're mid-corner, the stability from the steering and how much speed you can keep in the corners and then just explode when you're going out of them. It is an absolute weapon, this car is. And with those carbon ceramic brakes, you bleed off speed very easy. And it is actually so much car to use on a B road. People don't understand sometimes how serious an M car is, especially a comp. While we're at it, we can do a launch control, and there are two ways of doing it, and it's doing one in the wrong way and the right way. The wrong way is not having the ESC turned off, but you can still brake boost, which is pretty common in BMW M products. So just hold the brake, hold the throttle, you are building boost. Triple digit speeds, 130, 140, 150. The thing is, you're so incredibly isolated from what is happening outside. It's sounding much more outside than inside, that you're carrying so much speed, but everything is contained so well, from the suspension to the tires to the brakes to the steering. It's such a well-rounded package that keeps you at bay if you want it to. If you want this to misbehave, you can of course turn on the two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive sport and change the traction control settings. But you are getting more than enough play, fun, eagerness from the more normal setting. This is not normal in any way, and people are normalizing an M4, a comp, 530 horsepower. There's nothing normal about it. It is a weapon, I said it before, it is an absolute weapon, this is. But to use all of that power, it's extremely difficult, especially on a B road. To be up that in the rev range, you need to be on it, because you are pressing that throttle and you are absolutely gone. And you have to rewire your brain, because it is so much car to handle. This car might not give it that ultimate level of feedback and enjoyment like maybe the previous M3 or M4 generations were, or is, or are. But I cannot deny the level of all-round package. It's just such a well-rounded package. You know, what I complained about before was the lack of front, and that's just me nitpicking, because there's nothing that's really bad. There's nothing to really fault this car for, apart from the ultimate level of preciseness, the front end. But then you have the CS and even the CSL. What can we say about this new M4 Competition? Well, it's an absolute weapon, an absolute freaking weapon. This thing on a B road is anything but calm. It is aggressive, it is lively, but it has the composition to keep everything together. This is more than plenty of horsepower. But the limiting factor in this car are those tires, especially with those brakes. But luckily there's the CS and even the CSL for the one that is more hardcore. But you are paying a lot of money for this performance. That is my conclusion for this new BMW M4 Competition.